Hey guys, Jeremy here with Simple Life. We are digging up an old project. This is my hand sanding machine of doom, something like that. And I built this in my old shop, and I never really had room to store it. So it was something that I would have to drag out of the shipping container, bring it into the shop when I needed it. But now in the new space, we've got room and a half. So I thought, you know what? We need to make a cart for it. Now, in the process of this whole shop build that we've done, I've made so many different carts and tool trays, probably 8 or 9, to the point I'm kind of like, you know what? Let's not fuss over this stuff so much. And when you think about this is purely utilitarian. It doesn't have to look nice. This isn't for a customer. And my idea behind this is what's the fastest, cheapest, dirtiest way to get this done. So what I've got here is some 4-inch C-channel, and there is a boatload of this as scrap up in the barn. And I thought, you know what? This is going to be a perfect material to use. Very rigid, and don't have to pay for it. And the idea that I'm going with here is to build a triangular base that this is going to sit on. Just something like this. We'll also put a piece on the back there. I can weld this up, and then at each corner, I'll put a leg. That way we will have 3 legs. 4-legged things are kind of difficult to get them even. And then also, depending on where I am in the shop, the floor isn't always perfect. Whereas if you have 3 legs, it doesn't matter. It'll always have all 3 legs sitting down. 4 legs, some of my tool carts that I built, they, as you're moving them around, if you set them up in certain places, you'll have one wheel in the air and they rock and it's annoying. So I thought, you know what, this is going to be the easiest way. Also, that triangular shape is going to allow me to sit in front of this thing and have a leg on either side of it. That's kind of what I'm going with here. I'm building this at just like a regular office table height. So I can just, you got some sanding to do, you can get comfortable and get her done. Projects like this sometimes, you always kind of think, okay, what's the minimum requirement to do the job? There's a temptation to finesse everything and overbuild everything. And a lot of times that is important to do. But with something like this, again, this is just for me. I just needed to accomplish a task. So this is what I like to call the cheap and dirty type build. Nothing too fancy, nothing too crazy. Even the way we're doing these joints here, it's not amazing, but it should work. Here's a 2x2 square tubing that I'm going to use for the legs. And I'm making the overall height where the knife clamps into is going to be 29 inches. I just took that measurement from a desk, my office desk that I was sitting at, and kind of figured that out. And I think that should work just Jim dandy. The old Makita chop saw here has been doing good. It's about 5 years I've had this tool, and really, really enjoying it. This is fairly thin-walled steel tubing. Again, it doesn't have to be super strong. It's not like it's supporting a lot of weight. Just going straight down like that, it should be no big deal. So we'll just kind of dress up the ends, get rid of any burrs. And there you can see the locations that these legs are going to be. Even though this is a cheap and dirty build, I want decent welds, so cleaning the rust off and preparing the surface where you're going to weld is fairly important. Another thing I thought about when I was welding these, most often when I'm welding something, if there's a joint, I will throw beads over that entire joint. And I kind of started doing it on the very first weld here, but then I thought, you know what, if I just had an inch at the top and an inch at the bottom, that is going to be plenty strong enough. I don't really see a need to run a 4-inch bead at every joint there. First of all, it wastes a lot of wire, and it takes a lot of time, and honestly, there's no need. Overbuilding things is great, but the more I've been building lately, I've been thinking about, okay, what's the best way, the most efficient way for materials and time to get a good enough project, but, nothing that's going to fail. And it's kind of a balancing point, I think you kind of figure out and you kind of learn the more you make. Another example is that I didn't make plates and bolt these wheels. First, the main reason is that these wheels that I bought are larger than the 2-inch tubing, and where the holes are for bolting, they would line up right at the wall of the tubing. So I thought, you know what? Let's just weld these suckers on and be done with it. I am putting some cross members just to stiffen up the legs a little bit, and I kind of eyeballed the angles. Again, we got a weird triangular shape here, so I just kind of eyeball it, make some Sharpie marks, go test fit it, come back, test fit it, come back, and you start with a little bit long, grind them down, and you end up with a pretty nice fit. Got a couple of magnets here just supporting it. We're going 10 inches from the bottom of that base to the bottom of the steel tubing. I want to make sure I had plenty of clearance for my feet under there. And then in the future, if I want to turn this into a shelf, I could do that as well. Just cut a piece of plywood at a triangulation shape. And maybe it'd be a good spot to store sanding materials, you know, different jigs, fixtures that we use for hand sanding, stuff like that. And again, on this side, I just kind of eyeball what I think these angles should be. Cut them a little long, trim them on the grinder until we have a nice fit. Now, I'm not actually welding what will be the top side of these bars, because if I do put a piece of plywood on there, I don't like to have those welds to contend with. And again, this is one of those things, if I put a decent bead, these are 1-inch steel tubes. If I put a 1-inch bead on the bottom right there, and then a 1 inch down the side, that's going to be plenty strong enough for what this needs to do. All the steel and the wheels, and including most of the stuff to build the hand sanding machine, I picked up at Princess Auto. So I want to thank Princess Auto for sponsoring this video. And man, it's just phenomenal having a great company to work with. If you're a DIYer, tinkerer in Canada, and you know Princess Auto. And there's a basic concept. I think it's going to work good. Really like the 3-leg idea as opposed to the 4. And the shape is just very conducive to this machine. Lock those casters. And one thing I was worried about is if this machine was going to move a whole lot being on wheels, but it stays very rigid, and I didn't notice it moving at all once I locked those casters. And I do have all 3 of those casters as lockable. So here's a knife I'm working on, and this is going to be an upcoming knife build. This is my first S-grind I've ever done in my life. And what I've got here is a radius sanding block just to test it out. Now this steel's hardened, and I'm going to be a while on this knife, but that's kind of when a machine like this comes in handy. Obviously, it's a mildly dangerous machine. We've got like potentially a sharp edge there. So it's not something you want to be too distracted, but I think it's going to be really beneficial to have this machine ready to go. So I'm just cutting a piece of plywood here, and I'm just utilizing a little bit of the triangular space there. I need to put a support in here so that this end is supported. But just so I can have a little place right here to put different sandpapers, different, accoutrements, things that I'm using while I'm hand sanding. And believe it or not, I'm actually just using 2 half-inch tack welds to secure the machine to the base. I was looking at different places to bolt it down, and I thought, you know what? Again, so much extra work. What does it need to do? It just needs to not move. So a couple quick tacks, not going to affect anything. And if I need to remove it in the future, I can just come in with an angle grinder and chop those off. Alrighty, I'm so excited to finally have legs on this thing, and got a nice little work platform here that I can put different sandpapers, different sanding tools that I'm using, and I wanted this thing at a sit-down height because hand sanding is a slow process. Hand sanding, I know a lot of people don't think this is hand sanding, and it kind of isn't, but even with a machine like this, I do plan on being here for a long period of time, and it may as well be comfortable, may as well be sitting down. A couple things in the design with this. The last build video I did on this, it wasn't like super in-depth, but a key feature in this design, in my opinion, is this arm right here. And what that does, obviously, it takes this rotational motion and through this arm right here, and it converts it into an arc so that if I were to come right off of this wheel right to here, there would be a lot of articulation, and the idea that would put a lot of up and down force on the slide right here. So what this does is essentially acts as a bigger arc. It turns this small diameter into a larger diameter, and it just helps it's not linear motion still, but it just kind of helps turn it into more linear motion. You can see this pitman arm doesn't move nearly as much as that one does. And obviously, if this one was connected to here, there would also be less movement. The shorter it is, the more it has to move. But essentially, you look at this one articulates very little, and so that actually just helps this thing have a more forward and backwards pull on it rather than so much of a rotation. It would have worked fine, but I honestly think that this is a fairly important part of this design, and I think that makes a big difference. So altogether, I'm really happy with this. This was a project that I did as a sponsored video from Princess Auto. So thank you to Princess Auto for sponsoring this video, as well as the previous build of this. All these parts I got from Princess Auto. This steel was just old channel I had laying around. I got this steel from Princess Auto, this steel from Princess Auto, and all this different stuff, these bearings and stuff came from there. And I do have a knife project I'm in the middle of, and it's going to require a lot of hand sanding to finish it up. And so that was one I was actually previously just testing it on here. It's a build video I'm in the middle of, but I'm excited to have this done. I don't have to sit there for hours like this. I still have to sit there, but I mean, you throw a nice podcast in, and it's a much more enjoyable experience. I should probably put like a coffee cup holder right here maybe. And that way we could really be set. Maybe a little tray for my lunch or a little cooking. No, we get carried away. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.